Hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. You may not be able to tell by my outward expression, but I feel like shit. Ooh, a big old beeping stomping bag of shit. Just kidding. Kind of. I don't really feel like shit, but I like suddenly in the last couple hours, my energy dropped and I was like, wow, why am I so tired? So I've got my tea here. Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to be doing an AMA with x0r, and I've got my ukulele here to play us in, as he'll be joining us in the next 4 minutes. And hopefully my performance muscle will drive us through to ask great questions and hear all about it. All about it. Here we go. Let's go to this view. I'm going to start the show, start the event, grab my headphones. A 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, hit it. Oh, did I start it in the, it's in the audio lounge? Is it supposed to be in the audio lounge or is it supposed to be on stage? I don't know. I started it from the event, so I'm just going to go ahead and trust. Are Smooth and Dominic, are you able to unmute your mics? Are we just doing it a little differently this time? I'm gonna assume if nobody unmutes their mic to say hello that you can't, and we'll unmute x0r. x0r is the creator of the MEV Army and is an avid coder in the space. I'm very excited to sort of have this combo with them. Cohen, are we in the right space? I followed the link from the event and it brought me here. Whether or not Cohen can unmute at this time, I'm not sure.
I could unmute. Is this the wrong place?
Well, it doesn't have to be the wrong place, but it's not what we usually do, with the stage.
It's at the main stage.
Yeah, but it doesn't really make a difference. I think this is the audio lounge that we used for the Gary Vee event where people can't unmute. So
it's the same thing then. And we could because we bring people up, we could just move it to the audio stage, no? That we could move it to the main stage.
Yeah, we can move it to the main stage. Hey, x0r, thanks for joining us.
Let's just go into the.
Let's
just jump into the main stage.
All right, move in there. All right, here we are. Heidi, Heidi ho. And away we go. People are piling in. Oh, try to, there you are. Come on up, my friend. So as I said, x0r is the creator of the MEV Army, and I'm hoping to really level up my understanding of code and technology in the space during this AMA. I'm very excited to sort of connect with a development expert in that regard, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. I'm a little tangled here. What did I do? x0r, I gave you an invite up, but you're still in the audience. Let me try to fix that. There we go. Now I'm decoupled from my ukulele. Invite to speak. There you are. Hey, good afternoon.
Hey, how's it going? Sorry, it's funny. The other day I tried to do a similar type thing in my Discord, and I'm so used to Twitter Spaces, I have no idea how the Discord voice stuff really works, but figured it out. We're here.
Yeah, here we are. Right off the bat,
main stages are really good because you don't have to worry about rubbing out Discord.
That's true. Right off the bat, is your pseudonym x0r or Zor?
Great question. It's x0r.
Okay.
The reason is actually, this is a great. I'll give more info than was asked for because I think it's actually really interesting.
Fantastic.
Which is why it is x0r. So,
Please.
Like for anyone who's like into computer science, the lowest level of computer possible is binary, so zeros and ones, and basically all programs in the world distill down to zeros and ones, and these things known as logic gates or basically how zeros and ones interact with each other. And those logic gates are like exactly what they sound like. So like literally there's a logic gate and the name of it is called and. So like this and that. Or there's a logic gate called or. So this or that, right?
Yes.
And one of them is XOR. And what's interesting about XOR, as it relates to crypto specifically, and sort of why I chose it to be my name, is, and we can kind of dive as technical as you want to dive, because it has a little bit to do with probability. But the high level is that the XOR bit operation is used quite often in cryptography. In fact, like one of the most basic cryptographic ciphers, known as the one-time pad, is essentially taking some secret message, taking some random, string of numbers, and XORing, using the XOR formula, the secret message with the random string of numbers to create an encrypted message. And based on certain probability features of XOR, the encrypted message there's no way for anyone to kind of back out what the actual secret message was from the encrypted one.
Right.
Because of how XOR works. Basically, XOR creates a output. Like when you put two inputs into the XOR formula, it creates an output that it has equal probability of being a 0 or a 1, 50% probability of each.
Okay.
That is not the case for everything. So in crypto, it's used quite a bit. So I felt like it was an appropriate name for the crypto space. So that's why I chose XOR. And then I used the 0 really because I couldn't find the real x0r on Twitter. So I used 0 and it was cool. But
that's fantastic. And to answer your question, like I will say and yes and nod my head to like sort of give you clues to continue, but I'll also interrupt you just so like we can squeeze the orange for all the juice it's got. Like I don't understand the coding side or the development side, and I'm so excited to talk to somebody who does. Like I think that's a wonderful factoid. I just recently learned that factoid is actually not a tiny fact, but in fact a falsity. So it's not
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. But like colloquially, we use it like a factina, like a Chiquita fact, small fact. But that's not the definition. But the deep cut, that is XOR and how it sort of relates to the base of cryptography. And I want to hear about your backstory and your journey into code. But like, let's take a detour really quick and just acknowledge how little we talk about cryptography in the NFT and the blockchain space. Like, I think there are probably people in the room that may be unaware that and please clarify this for me, like the blockchain runs on cryptographic algorithms. Is that accurate for the most part for proof of work?
So basically the blockchain uses cryptography as a mechanism to ensure that, the decentralized parties who are kind of, holding up the blockchain and sort of keep it humming along are trustless, right? Because by using cryptography, you're basically trusting math rather than trusting each other. So it's kind of like it's used as more of like this convenient mechanism to ensure that everyone is kind of in check with what they do.
And in the simplest sense, oh, sorry, go ahead. Well, I was gonna say, in the simplest sense, does cryptography mean writing codes? Is that what the meaning of that crypto part is? Because I know that
not exactly.
Okay.
So cryptography basically means, and there's a lot of definitions of it, but crypto and cryptography is the idea of using different algorithms to sort of like hide information in a sort of way, or ensure that some information is valid. So like, for example, if I had a secret of whatever that might be, I just had a secret, and then I encrypted it using some cryptographic algorithm, and then I gave you that encrypted message, you would have no way to actually determine what my secret really is without me giving you the key to sort of decrypt it and figure it out. So that's like sense. what cryptography is all about. And the reason why that's important is because you can kind of use this idea of a key in cryptography to protect things, right? So in my example I just gave, it's to protect a secret. Like in this secret just might be like the password to my computer. In crypto, it's your wallet and your assets, right? So your private key or your seed phrase, through a few, simply at a high level, is what gives you access to your ether or your NFTs or your tokens, right? And by using the elliptic curve cryptographic algorithm, you're basically, you're allowed to access your funds, right? Like here's something interesting. So fun fact, we always talk about this thing called like a wallet. Like we have a MetaMask wallet. Right. We have like a Ledger wallet. You have nothing in your wallet. Your wallet, there is no asset in your wallet. The only thing that's in your wallet is your private key.
Yeah.
Your assets, your ETH, your NFTs, those are located in a box on the blockchain. Your wallet that contains the key allows you or anybody else who has that key to unlock that box and access those assets. So yeah, when you think about it, actually wallet is kind of a bad term because it's like, no, there's nothing in your wallet other than a really short string of numbers and letters that is your quote unquote private key that gives you the cryptographic access to some box, kind of like a safety deposit box on the blockchain.
So to bring this back to
the tokens actually never leave the blockchain. So when someone's saying, oh, I'm going to transfer this token to you, they're not actually transferring the token. The token never moves. They're just transferring the access.
Exactly. So it depends on what it is though. So for example, each asset behaves differently. So if we're thinking about ether, right? Think about your wallet address as a box on the blockchain. Okay. Yeah. Each box contains ether. If I have ether in my box and I want to transfer that ether to you, I'm basically using my private key to, one, verify that I do have access to my ether. I am indeed the person that has access. And then I'm basically moving that ether over to your box, right?
Yeah.
Now, that is for ether. When you're thinking about NFTs or you're thinking about tokens, it's actually a little bit different. So NFTs, and I know we're kind of like, we're jumping in here.
We're diving in. No, this is exactly where we want to go.
So NFTs and tokens, actually, they live nowhere except for the smart contract that they are minted from. So an NFT has a smart contract or a token has a smart contract. All tokens, every single token lives in that smart contract. And that smart contract, you can kind of think of has like a little Excel spreadsheet within it. Like not really, but like just as a way to think about it. That smart contract contains an Excel spreadsheet that maps your address to a specific token ID. Mm-hmm. So when you are transferring an NFT, all you're doing is basically going to that smart contract and changing that Excel spreadsheet saying that instead of your address owning or being mapped to token ID number 1, some other address is going to be basically be mapped to token ID number 1.
Yeah,
but the actual token of an NFT never leaves the smart contract.
So correct me if I'm wrong, kind of similar to how with an ENS address, you assign a registrant and a controller. You're basically just changing that field that's within the smart contract to say the controller of this NFT is now a different private key.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a good analogy is it's like, I know it's going to sound very counter to what everyone's about, but a smart contract, whether that's ENS or an NFT, is basically a centralized database on the blockchain that keeps track of all those NFTs.
Right. And is the centralized location of that smart contract technically decentralized amongst all of the nodes, or does it actually live because it doesn't live in a singular place, right?
Right. So yeah, the code of the smart contract and therefore also the storage that smart contract contains, so the Excel spreadsheet, like I was saying, that lives and is duplicated across every single node.
Yes.
That is holding up the Ethereum network.
Right, so because every node has to verify its transaction history against every other node in order to complete whatever the block they're processing is.
Exactly. And actually, I'm just looking right now on Etherscan. and it does. Let's see. I'm just trying to see like how many nodes are actually like
Ah,
live right now. Like what is the number?
Oh,
Okay, so there's approximately 2,500 live nodes on the Ethereum network right now.
oh wow, that's a lot smaller than I expected to hear.
But it varies. Like sometimes it's 5,000. You know, I think it varies throughout the day.
Sure.
But
One question about the seed phrase and the private key. So as you were talking about like cryptography as a way to take something that is a secret and make an output that you could never reverse engineer to the secret, is the seed phrase then essentially that output for which by having it gives you access to the private key?
yeah, so your seed phrase is that thing that nobody should ever
Right.
reverse engineer, or well, let's be technically accurate in saying your private key is the thing that no one should be able to reverse engineer. Your seed phrase itself is actually not a private key. Your seed phrase, as the name implies, is a seed to calculate a private key.
Yes.
Right? Like I'm sure you've all probably noticed that like when you put a seed phrase in MetaMask, it actually creates like an infinite amount of potential wallets.
Yes.
All those wallets stem from that one seed, like the root of a tree, and you have all these wallets that branch from it. But yes, the idea is that the seed phrase itself and also the private key of each individual wallet should not be something that anybody could ever be able to guess. Like
right.
the amount of possible seed phrases that can exist is I think it's 2048 factorial, which is like
Ooh,
more than the amount of stars in the universe.
right.
Can you answer me a question? And I'm assuming I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but you can confirm it for me. Is having MetaMask being able to create multiple wallets because it's from the seed phrase, they don't communicate. If they don't communicate with each other, they're not traceable to each other mapping wise because they're from the same seed phrase, correct?
So like they are traceable to each other if you know the seed phrase. So
Right.
if you know the seed phrase, then you can map them all to each other. But if someone didn't know the seed phrase and they just knew like the two different wallets, there's no way for them to be able to say that these two wallets map to the same seed phrase. Like you couldn't go backwards.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's interesting, but if you do have the seed phrase, you could every wallet that's I mean, in theory, you could map that without going into MetaMask, but you can put it on a map that you all of a sudden have, you know, those explosive graph maps they do of like intercommunicating with each other. So you can have all these that just explode on there.
Yep. Yeah. So that's why you want to keep your seed phrase as safe as possible. But I also like want to put, I don't know if this is where you were headed, but just to put this in there, like just because like you are trying to create, you know, like let's say you want to have a private wallet to do, you know, stuff that you don't want people to see that you're doing. And you're just like creating that wallet by making a new thing in MetaMask. Like the world doesn't know that those wallets are connected, but MetaMask probably knows that those wallets are connected. So like the public won't be able to tell, but like if push comes to shove, like MetaMask knows.
That's very interesting. I have kind of a niche question for you. You know, I get a lot of people asking me if they ever need to reset their account in MetaMask. And I wonder if you know, if you reset an account in MetaMask, you re-enter the recovery phrase and it will synchronize so that all of the wallets that you've ever created are still there, right? There's like, I guess I'm having trouble identifying the purpose of ever resetting your account.
Yeah, I don't know why you would reset. I mean, you're definitely true. Like
it erases your transaction history.
It repopulates everything. I don't know why you would ever like log out, like reset it. Like, okay, so the other day, for example, I use a ledger. I recommend everyone use a ledger for more important stuff. Like my ledger broke. Like I don't like for whatever reasons, like the battery died and I couldn't access my funds. But that's okay because I was just able to go buy another ledger, input my seed phrase, and I populated everything again. But just like refreshing, like basically logging out of MetaMask and logging back in with your seed phrase, that doesn't do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's zoom out a little bit. I'd love to hear the story of how you became an authority on the things that you're talking about and how you came to become a developer at all.
Sure. Yeah, it's actually a great story. So I, in my previous life and current life, but before I became a coder or got into programming at all, I was a magician actually, and that was one of my hobbies. I worked for David Blaine at a point in time. I basically all I did on the weekends was I would go to LA and perform at the Magic Castle. If you've heard of it,
Amazing. We probably have a lot of friends. I work in the clown and circus industry, and so like, yeah, I've been to the Magic Castle a handful of times.
Amazing. Yeah, we could probably sync offline and see who we know. But yeah, so I was always into that, and there is a, as magic develops in general, magic develops with technology. What the world finds impressive develops as technology develops, right? So what was impressive 1,000 years ago is no longer impressive today, for the most part. So what that means is that there's this whole new side of magic now that involves technology, and not necessarily magic that like the secret is technological, more so like that a magician might perform a trick that incorporates an iPhone, right? Because it is a common object that we all understand. And if I can do something amazing with your iPhone, like guess the password, that's really impressive. So anyways, why do I bring this up? Well, when I went to college, my roommate at the time in my freshman year was a developer. And I told him about this, and he's like, Michael, I think I might be, by the way, my real name is Michael. I might be able to build you an app that can do like a cool iPhone magic trick. Of course, I was like, let's do it. That's so cool. That's cutting edge. It's new in the magic world. People would love it. And he built it for me. However, unfortunately, he dropped out. He was too smart for school. And I kind of lost touch with him. And now I was kind of left with this code base of a trick that broke, and I had no idea how to fix it. So the only thing I could do was go take the introduction to computer science course just so that I can learn how to fix the magic trick.
Wow.
So I did. And then of course after that I kind of fell down the rabbit hole and I fell in love with it. And I really spent all my time from a coding perspective, not like building websites or anything, but actually building magic tricks, building illusions that involve technology. So that's sort of how I went from being a magician to programming. And then how I kind of got into NFTs was around so I got into crypto, or I've always known about crypto because of my brother, who's been in it for many, many, many years. My brother is Blau, 3LAU.
Right.
And he's been in it for many years. So I've always, around the house, have heard about it. I never really kind of got into it though, until kind of like the beginning of last year, or around the beginning of COVID. I started to poke my head around smart contracts a little bit. And I really got into it because my brother would tell me that, this stuff could never get hacked. And me as a programmer was like, there's definitely not true. So I got to go and figure out how to hack these things.
Challenge accepted.
What was that?
I said challenge accepted is what you
Challenge accepted, right. So, but of course, falling down the rabbit hole of figuring out how to, prove an older brother wrong, I guess, in fun, a little brother trying to trick his older brother. I actually was just like, oh my God, this stuff is so cool. And I totally understood NFTs. I got it immediately of how amazing and innovative and revolutionary they were. And I was just so obsessed. Crypto is the perfect combination of everything I love, which is, finance, economics, game theory, puzzles, cryptography, all batched in one place. So I just kind of fell down the rabbit hole so hard. And I just wanted to learn everything. I needed to understand how it all worked. Especially because at the time when I was getting into it, like nobody could answer my questions. Like I had so many questions and no one could answer them. So if no one could answer them for me, I had to go figure it out myself. And now I'm here.
That's fantastic. I don't know how this is always the serendipitous thing, but I feel like Cohen is able to connect with some of the most curious people in this space. Like I just think so. As a clown, I'm sure you had exposure to clowns with your work. Like curiosity is like the number one tool, right? It's the thing that allows you to say maybe and yes and to consider and play. And play is so important, I think, to life in general. I love that the driving factor for you is like the curiosity of why can nobody answer these questions? I have to seek them out. Very cool. Very, very cool. So I guess the question is, what else? Like, what happens next? I'd love to talk about Mev Army, and maybe there's a direct tie, but there a lot has happened in the space since the beginning of COVID when you just started learning. So maybe the interesting follow up is, When did you find the community that sort of was on par with you, that was answering these questions for themselves as well? What did that look like?
Yeah. So I think when I got into NFTs, which was the beginning of last year, of course, my older brother had done it. Me as a little brother, I wanted to do it too. And I was kind of trying to figure out what's my niche. And at the time in the NFT space, and it's like, it feels like centuries ago, it was really only about like digital art. Like there was no such thing as, Discord community. There was no such thing as like utility. That was like totally not even a part of the lingo. It was all about like, is this cool art or not? So I was like, okay, well, what's cool art? And I was like, I'm learning about all these cool technical crypto ideas just to learn. So what if I kind of mesh them together in this cool ASCII art situation where I could basically create a visual of some crypto technology, but embed the actual code of that technology within the artwork. And the reason why I did that is because I figured that at the time, a lot of people who were creating NFTs were making this beautiful artwork, like these 3D animated things. PFPs like weren't even really a thing. And what I realized was that the people who I wanted to collect my art were people who, when they looked at it, they understood what I was trying to do, which is why the very first collection I did was titled For Those Who Know, kind of like speaking like, hey, if you're a crypto native and you're technical and you look at this and you get it, it's for you. And that was the original intention. However, what ended up really happening was that people would look at it who maybe didn't understand it and read the description of the artwork and they learned something. They were like, hey, I didn't know about these things called Merkle trees, or I didn't know about, and I realized that actually I had attracted an audience that I actually did not originally really intend to, which was people who wanted to learn.
Yes.
And that inspired me. I'm like, oh my God, this is so powerful. Now let's run with it and really, double down on this kind of art as learning theme. So that was like my story of how I sort of found the community, or actually in a weird sort of way, how the community found me, if you think about it.
Absolutely. I actually tend to believe that any kind of art has a component of education. I think about like the earliest forms of storytelling where you as an individual, without internet, let's even go before TV and radio, like your understanding of human experience is your own, and what you see in what you hear and see in stories. And so whether it's visual art or film or the way that you're using code, like there's an element of education, but just simply by exposure, right? And then sometimes more like teaching, like how do you understand a concept? How do you express a feeling? How do you relate to things in the world? So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. Also, I'll add something real quick, which is that, actually, maybe I don't know if what your question
go ahead.
was. Maybe
No,
I'm
please.
going in the same direction.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say is what I realized after my first drop that I did, and everyone wanted this education, and they were kind of like looking at it as an educational art form. What was interesting is the next thing that I decided to do was, okay, it's cool to have like art with code with like a nice succinct description of what this code is, but that's not really enough. Like you have to have, people need to learn things by doing and being active. And that's why actually I started to kind of get into this whole puzzle thing, where my second drop, it was the same theme of like code is art, but there was like these puzzles embedded within it. And anyone who attempted to solve those puzzles would learn something, and actually learn some technical part about crypto. So it was almost like a call to action, like, hey, here's a puzzle. If you solve it, you'll get like a prize. But even if you attempted, you will still come away learning something interesting. And that was what inspired me to kind of get into that phase of things next.
Yeah, super cool. Cohen, do you want to come in? Oh, I saw Cohen on mute. Amazing. I've got so many different questions going through my mind. I'm curious, like in the vein of education, we're seeing a lot of copycats in the space, right? A lot of codes are available, or I guess contract code is available through GitHub. It's relatively easy to copy paste certain things. I wonder how many different types of smart contracts are there really in the NFT space, And maybe that's a really loaded question. But I'm curious, like between generative and GAN and lazy minting, like if it feels like maybe a dozen, but still a relatively small number of mechanisms that we're using to mint. Is that more or less accurate?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think there are like two bases, right? There's ERC-721 and there's ERC-1155.
Yes.
And these are, even though they're standards, like most developers probably use a pre-built implementation of it from a company known as Open Zeppelin. And almost, I would say like 99% of NFTs is using that exact code base. But what changes between smart contract to smart contract is like whatever the minting mechanism is. So whether that's a lazy mint, like you said, a Dutch auction, or, you know, all that sort of stuff. The only actual category where I think there's a little bit more involvement on like the artwork side is like something that's on chain, especially something that's on chain and generative, because now, you know, the ERC-721 standard and 1155 standards, all that really does is that basically defines what I was talking about before, which is one, an Excel spreadsheet that tracks a token ID to an address, and two, everything you can do with that token ID. So what that means is like, how do you transfer it? Who's allowed to transfer it on your behalf? All of like the management of the NFT, that's already baked into 721 and 1155. The other stuff, the artwork itself, or how the stuff is minted, that's where you get these other creative pockets that will, you know, sprout up. So, and whatnot. But again, you know, it's hard because like sometimes when something is generative, that actually might not be built into a smart contract at all, right? So like, for example, like if you look at like Bored Apes as a generative project, in the definition that like these apes were not hand designed, they were generated by an algorithm, right? Like that happened on some computer somewhere else. All your NFT does is point to that image, right? Versus something where you're thinking about like art blocks, which is like generative by using like JavaScript that's actually stored within a smart contract. You know, there's an interesting new mechanism that is kind of cool and interesting. That is like generative in like the most pure sense on chain. So there's probably maybe like 12 or so, I would say, different general themes.
Yeah, but, I think that's really exciting because we see a new one pop up every couple of months, it feels like, where there's like actually something new, and there's like a lot of conversation about it, like how it, like, you know, even just the development of 721A is like a big deal, is my understanding. Maybe that's a good thing. Just would love to hear in your own words, for people who haven't heard, there's a 721A that reduces the cost of gas on multiple mints from the same contract. Can you give us a slightly more technical look at what that does, or how that functions?
Sure. Yeah. And by the way, I'll also say there's now unofficially, I guess I'll call it 721B. It's not really called that, but JPEG Digital. I actually think he might be in the audience. I'm not 100% sure. He created an even better version of it. I talked about it on my Twitter Spaces last night, but beside the point. But anyways, so.
No, that's very much the point. I mean, you know, we all drive each other forward. That's exciting. I'd love actually to get a link to that or connect.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. Yeah. But at a high level, the way 720 works, and then also I'll tell you my opinion about it, is when you are minting an NFT. So let's totally rewind. When you execute a transaction against a smart contract, your gas cost is calculated based on the complexity of the code that is executed within that smart contract.
Right.
And there are certain things that are more expensive than others. One of those things is storing data. So like if you think about it, all minting an NFT does stores a mapping of your address to a token ID, right? So that itself is quite expensive. So when you go and want to mint 10 NFTs at a time, that is 10 storage operations, right?
Yes.
So your costs will grow linearly. ERC-721A takes an interesting approach where basically and I don't want to get like too technical because it's actually quite hard to describe it without looking at code itself.
Hmm.
But the high level idea is that they're kind of wrapping those 10 NFTs into a single write to storage, into a single storage operation rather than like 10 at a time. Now, what is good about this and what's bad about it? I was talking about this yesterday, but it's interesting. It's kind of like energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? And smart contract costs cannot be created or destroyed either, right? What that means is that, sure, minting something will be cheaper. But what that will do is that will actually make other things, such as transferring or checking ownership, more expensive. So it's a trade-off. So what does that really look like in practice? So let's pretend you go to mint something like ERC-721A. You have an amazing mint experience. You mint them cheaply. Awesome. Now you go and want to transfer it. Or more interestingly, let's say another smart contract had a staking mechanism. And that staking mechanism wanted to check and ensure that you are indeed an owner of an Azuki in this case, or you're an indeed owner of NFT A or B. It doesn't matter. There's a function in ERC-721 that is called owner of, which basically it takes as input a token ID and returns to you the address that owns it. So to me, that's actually a super important function of an NFT because that's like what shows the ownership, right? Like there's no other way to see ownership other than through that function. That also is what creates interoperability between smart contracts. Like, how does another smart contract know if you actually own something? Well, it needs to look at this function. However, what ends up happening is that function call, the code that gets executed by checking ownership, is actually now a little bit more expensive than it would have been if you would have minted an NFT, like the original way. So basically what happens now, and the trade-off of all blockchain is a trade-off of scalability and composability. You can't have both at the same time. So in ERC-721A, you get this scalability component of mint, which is super amazing, but you're kind of giving up a little bit of the composability transaction costs that come with it. So it's all a trade-off. It's just about like what trade-off do you care about? In this situation, I think this is actually a really good trade-off to make because people have been trying to figure out ways to mass mint NFTs for a long time. I remember when I first tried to figure it out, I was like surprised that you couldn't mint a lot of NFTs cheaply. So I actually think like ERC-721A and the thing that a buddy of mine, JPEG, built is like a huge push forward in the space and is actually going to change the game. So I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah, I think that.
Here's my rant. Sorry, I said a lot of things there.
No, it's totally fine. And I know that you have a hard out coming up. So I want to make sure there's time for you to like tell us the best way to follow you, support you, engage with things you care about, whether that's joining your project or whatever. So we'll come to that at the end. But I wanted to like go into more like.
I just want to say, Jeremy.
Yeah.
For the Discord, I dropped the link for the Discord in the
voice channel.
I also dropped the link to the OpenSeas to the to see if you want to see what the MEV looks like. I put it there.
Great. And I also just opened up the POAP channel, so you can go to request POAP and drop your full alphanumeric address, and we'll get a delivery out for attending today's AMA. And x0r, please do that as well. Or you can back channel it to us, and we'll
wait. What channel is that in?
It's above the stage. It's called the request POAP. There's a little mailbox. Cool. Yeah. Should be.
We'll do that.
Let me check if it's working properly. Yeah, I see a bunch of addresses.
Do you take ENS domains or just the hexadecimal address?
You can do an ENS domain, but I ask people to put their full alphanumeric address because when there's too many ENSs, it screws with the POAP delivery system. When it's like 5, it doesn't care, but when it's like 50, it'll give me failure to fetch errors. And
no worries, I'll do the normal one. Don't worry about it.
Thanks. So there's a couple things in the space that I feel there's plenty of things in the space that people don't have to fully understand, right? Like you don't need to understand the dynamics of how the owner of function works necessarily, or even how a block is mined to participate in the space. It's just, you don't. But I want to ask you the question, what are some things that you think people need to know regarding like the technical interaction that goes on day to day?
I think it's a really great question. I think that the long-term view of all this is that no one should need to understand anything. But I think at the current stage of how things are, I actually do think that people should understand some things that might be a little bit more technical, purely for safety. And I think, look, there's an endless list of things. I think the biggest thing that people need to understand in this space is that a website is not a smart contract. And what do I mean by that? When you go to a website to mint the latest airdrop, okay, that website can say whatever it wants. They can give you a mint button. They can tell you a mint price. They can make your MetaMask pop up and make you send a transaction. That does not mean you're minting something, right? So how do you know? Like, how does someone really be able to tell the difference? And by the way, this kind of factors into what happened with OpenSea, right? Which is wallets do a really terrible job of letting you as the user know what's going on, right? They just give you a confirm button and a bunch of ugly numbers. And who could really understand what's going on? No one. It's so hard. So what I encourage people to do as like an action item, like to improve, security, is when your MetaMask pops up, at the very top, it's going to say your address is sending a transaction to X address, whatever it might be. Pause. Take that address, put it in Etherscan. Now, what does that mean? Like, for starters, you don't need to know anything about smart contracts, but if you go to Etherscan and that smart contract is not verified, run and hide. Don't even think about, especially if it's like some mint website you found in a Discord. Because if that smart contract is not verified, automatically it tells me that someone's trying to hide something, right? So that's like step number one, as like something that you just should definitely do. Step number two is, I think what happened with OpenSea's situation is like there used to be this thesis that if you just like sign a message, it's not doing anything scary, right? Like nothing someone can do. It's only bad if you like actually send a transaction. What the OpenSea hacks showed is that is actually not the case. And unfortunately, there are some situations where like when MetaMask pops up and has you sign something, it's actually not going to give you any information about what you're signing. And that's, unfortunately, there's nothing we can really do about that, because that is the MetaMask fault. That is not your fault as a user, right? But I would say that when something does pop up for signing, take a minute to read it. And if it is ugly and you can't understand it, maybe don't sign it. Maybe ask a friend, right? Maybe if you're not sure, and this is sort of like one of the reasons why I created MEVArmy, hop in the MEVArmy community and just like post it in the investigation channel. Be like, hey guys, like, is this cool or not? Right? Like, don't jump to do things, which I know is scary in a space where everything is about speed and getting in at mint and like doing things fast.
Yep.
But like, people are taking advantage of that to do really sketchy things. So I don't think it's like, no one needs to know anything technical. I think it's more of like, take a moment before you sign your life away in a transaction to like really see what's going on. Because like in the simplest case, you could have a mint website which might, mint an NFT, but it also might swipe your wallet of all its ether, right? Like, totally happen, and unfortunately, if you don't know smart contract language, it is a little challenging to maybe identify that. But I think like level one, that smart contract is not verified, don't even think about pressing confirm. Don't even think about it. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's my opinion.
I know that's helpful. It really is. And I record a podcast really regularly, or as regularly as I can, on VeeFriends, and I mostly talk about what's going on in that project. And as I started to learn about the space myself, I needed to start sharing those lessons. And it just became a requirement basically for me to record a podcast on a weekly basis of the new scam and safety protocols and things that people need to hear. Like, I try to say it in every single piece of content where possible about not sharing your seed phrase and doing your due diligence, verifying, like, don't verify or don't trust, but verify who you're talking to and all of these things. So I love a little more technical thing. Like, I honestly didn't consider until you said it that when I see the contract address that my wallet is interacting with, I can copy that, take it to Etherscan, and see what this is before just trusting that the interface is going to take care of me. And it's another good reason why people should mitigate their risk. I saw a lot of chatter about this in the aftermath of OpenSea about having a high risk wallet, a low risk wallet, and a no risk wallet. Basically, your vault where you interact with as little as humanly possible, and a lower risk where you're connected to the exchanges and you're listing and things, and then a high risk wallet where you can connect it to something that maybe is a little less certain because you're not holding any of your valuable things there. You use that for minting, and then you move your valuable assets into one of your other two boxes on the blockchain, as it were.
Exactly. Right.
And
not to like, I don't want to,
Please.
shill anything, but like, this is the whole reason why I created MEV-ARMY, right? It's to create a place where people can kind of talk about, technical crypto things that are maybe a little bit deeper and peeling back the layers a little bit more than like the typical knowledge that you might get from like a YouTube video,
yes.
but not necessarily so far to the point where like you're required to know how to code, right? It's trying to educate just that extra little, that intermediate step to get to the point where you can kind of exercise actual best practices and safety metrics, not just, random things that people might throw around in a Twitter Spaces or something.
Absolutely, 100,000%. For these last couple of minutes, I want to give you the stage, Michael. So what do you care most about? How can this community, like, I took a look at MEV-ARMY. I see a bunch of resources here. People should definitely join just to participate. But is there something that we can do for you? What's the ask, or who are you wanting to support right now?
Listen, I no ask or anything. I think I obviously love it when people join my community, and it's sometimes it's you have to verify to actually see all the cool stuff that's going on in the Discord. But I welcome everyone to come join, and don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're not a programmer, like, doesn't matter. It's the place for you to ask. It's a place basically that I wanted to create a bridge between people who aren't technical and people who are technical, and create a safe space for them to ask each other questions and check on things and make sure that what they're doing is good, and make sure it's a place to learn. And but that being said, that MEV-ARMY community is a lot more than education. It's kind of a platform for me and the team to kind of build really cool experimental NFTs. So like you said in the beginning, there's a lot of different smart contracts, and every day there are new ones that are created. And we want to be one of the groups of people who are actually innovating on that front and creating new and interesting NFT dynamics. One of the things that we're doing next that I think is really interesting is this idea that each MEV-ARMY traits are on chain. And what that means is that when the traits are on chain, not the images are on Arweave, but the traits are on chain. And it makes it really easy for like another smart contract to actually plug in to the MEV-ARMY collection and make it like super composable. So one of the first things we're doing is we're creating this like, it's like a free claim to MEV-ARMY holders as like an experiment and demonstration of what you could do with this on-chain trait data. And they're like MEV-ARMY banners. So each MEV-ARMY is a part of a legion, and you can eventually go and claim in the next few weeks or so when it's launched this like banner. But what's really interesting about this banner, besides the fact that it's on-chain ASCII art, fully on-chain, all that stuff, that's not interesting. But what is interesting is that if you're a part of a legion or you're a part of a community, what does it mean to have a community-owned NFT? Right? Like, what does that really mean? And what we're doing with MEV-ARMY is we're kind of experimenting with that concept. Is anyone who's a part of a certain legion and owns a certain legion banner has the right to actually change how it looks within certain parameters like colors and text and whatnot. But the interesting thing is that a lot of other NFTs that have experimented with updatable NFTs, they're updatable for your NFT, but with a banner, it's going to be updatable for the whole legion, which means that if you go in and change, turn the searcher legion, and you actually go and update that NFT, it will change for everyone else legion. All of their wallets will update with the new look that you just created, which is kind of a really interesting dynamic that I haven't really seen much in NFTs that I'm curious to experiment with and see how it goes. So that's kind of like the next thing coming up from MEV-ARMY. So for anyone who's interested in joining, it's not just about education, it's also about experimenting with NFT tech and, just really building toward the future of Web3 rather than building for hype, right? That is not what it's about, right?
Yes.
We are huge believers in this technology and think that it's totally the future. Like, it's undeniable in my mind. And that's what we're building toward. Like, we're building toward the future. We're not building for a hype, or like a price pump that's going to happen tomorrow. That's like totally not in our strategy. So that's my pitch or I guess shill, if you will. But
no, it's fantastic. If I could ask you one more question, Cohen told me you have a heart out. You need to head out, do you?
No, go ahead. I got a sec. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like him before he gets out to discuss the actual art, because I think we haven't touched on it, and it's so cool because I own a piece, and you have to see the actual art, and you have to zoom in on it to see the actual art. Like, you think it's just changing, but if you actually go, it's words and numbers constantly changing and rotating through.
Yeah, I took a look. I didn't realize that you did the collaboration with Gary Vee and TikTok as well, which I thought was a really cool execution.
Oh yeah, that was really fun. That was a really cool NFT as well. It was super interesting that the actual ASCII art in that NFT contained like all the people who, I think it was commented on Gary's viral video, which was so fun.
And then his face is made up of the smart contract for
VeeFriends.
The contract address for VeeFriends.
Yeah, exactly.
I get a lot of questions about that NFT. Like, people randomly message me. They're like, when are we going to get utility or something for the TikTok NFT? And I'm like, I don't know. Wait 5 years.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I actually don't have an answer for that.
Oh, no problem.
Wish I could provide more info on that front. But I think that's more of a question for Gary.
For sure.
But yeah, I just like to quickly talk about the MEV-ARMY artwork. Yeah, so it's basically creatures lurking in the mem pool, MEV bots, arbitrage bots, and the code that's running through every MEV face is the actual code that a miner would manipulate or change in order to like exploit transactions, right? So the way MEV works is essentially when you submit a transaction to the network, it goes to like this pending transaction pool that is public and everyone can see, and a miner could basically optimistically select and pick certain people's transactions out of that pool and order them in such a way where it actually gives them a profit or a benefit. So basically the code that they would use to sort of do that is what is in the face of the MEV-ARMY bot or MEV-ARMY collection. So that's the code that's there.
Super cool. I wanted to ask you, considering that we're building a DAO here, and we're doing a bit of on-chain governance through Snapshot. And I say a bit because, the centralized to decentralized spectrum and the spectrum of autonomy is something that we talk about a lot. Like the three of us on stage here sort of generated this concept, and these concepts have to come from somewhere. But I wonder, I'd love to hear you speak about like your perception of DAOs now, like things that you're excited to develop in that space, or maybe what your hot take is on people who are building DAOs, and maybe,
for sure,
maybe how to best run them.
Yeah. So again, I think it's still early, and a lot of people are figuring it out. There's no like best practice, but you're right. The current state of DAOs is kind of like a multi-sig and semi-decentralized voting platforms, which is okay because, listen, Web 2 needed Web 1, just like Web 3 needs Web 2, right? Web 3 is not isolated. We are on a Web 2 platform right now to talk about Web 3 concepts, right? So I think it's okay that the current state of DAO tooling is in that space of the combination of both. I think what I'm interested to see the future of DAOs develop are on two specific fronts. One is treasury management, right? It's like DAOs have these big buckets of money or tokens, and what do they do with that money? And not so much do with that money in the sense of like, hey, I'm gonna, you know, pay a DAO contributor, or I'm going to pay like a grant to someone who's going to build something cool. That's obviously great. What I'm thinking about is DAO treasury in terms of like all of a sudden you have this sort of like little mini company and you have assets, and like what do you do to grow the value of those assets beyond just like the appreciation of the token price. So like something that's really interesting to me is like, what do DAO mergers look like, or DAO to DAO transactions is super interesting to me. Like what happens when DAOs start holding tokens of other DAOs is a design space I'm very excited to learn about and see how that grows. So that's one area. The other area that I'll mention is, you know, I actually don't think, this is a big one. This is a big topic. So if you look at traditional finance and a traditional stock, this is not the case for everything, but like a large majority, when you own a share of stock, you get two things. You get a vote, right? You get a vote for the company, and you also get a dividend or dividend yield.
Right.
Now, why is that really important? Now, granted, not every stock is like that. Doesn't exist for everyone. Not every stock issues a dividend. But why is it important to have both? Well, because it sort of incentivizes people to hold, right? But if you think about a DAO and when having a DAO token, and this is not the case for every DAO, but you actually have this opportunity cost of, do I hold a DAO token and vote, or do I take that DAO token and place it in a liquidity pool to earn a yield on it, right? So it's either a dormant token that doesn't do anything but vote, or I get yield on it. They're separated. So actually, the idea of like a token as being a part of an organization is actually lagging the traditional finance world in that sense, because they're decoupled. So I'm very interested to see how the future of DAOs start to develop, where basically not necessarily that by owning a DAO token, you get a dividend, because that would make it a security, but more so DAOs allowing other, like basically you could vote in a DAO by either owning the token or owning an LP token for that token, right? Basically allowing people to vote with derivative representations of that token, so that a user, if they so decided to, can actually represent both. Because if you don't have that, and why do I bring this up? If you don't have that mechanism, you actually create this whole idea of, talk about minor extractable value, how about DAO extractable value or governance extractable value, where people can basically bribe others for their tokens in order to leverage voting, right? And basically influence voting. And the reason why that some malicious party would be willing to bribe you to borrow your voting power is because whatever they're going to vote on will give them a greater yield than what they're paying you. And they're taking the arbitrage between that.
Right.
So this is a big problem that I'm really interested to see how that develops in the future. It's super fascinating.
Yeah, I love that you brought it there. I mean, for months we've been sort of developing a strategy for a utility token, where you would be able to stake because we use a 721 for our governance token over the community vault, and staking those in order to earn a fungible utility token. And it is like, that is one of the biggest problems that I'm like, beyond the whole Pandora's box of like, okay, what is a utility token? What's the utility of your utility token? I love, there's a tweet that went viral recently that was like, staking useless NFTs for useless tokens is not creating value. So like, just doing everything we can to avoid that situation. But yeah, you need a representative, so that like while you're staking and earning your V token, for example, you can still participate in the vote. You have an LP representation of it, I guess that wouldn't be LP necessarily, but like regardless of whatever side of that sort of triangle you're in. Yeah, those are fascinating problems. That's it.
Sorry, I just rambled. It's such an interesting topic. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to maybe having the conversation again. It was really great to. You've been the most technically knowledgeable guest that we've had, and I'm getting a lot of messages in DM of like, I'm joining the Mev Army and I'm loving this conversation. I didn't realize I needed to learn so much. So I think you've inspired some people to follow their curiosity. I think that's very special. And so thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is great. And obviously, like, always happy to come back and do another one. I know like we are strapped for time because I do got to run, but like I could do this any day. So definitely would love to come back and do it again. This was really great. Thanks so much for having me.
Very cool. Yeah. Would love if people in the chat want to just say thank you to x0r in the voice channels text. I see people asking, are you too late for the POAP? Nope. I'll walk you through it in just a second. Thank you so much, x0r. And yeah, good luck with wherever you're headed next.
Thanks, guys. You too. Best of luck.
Talk soon. So for everybody who's asking about the POAP, the channel is Request POAP. It's just 2 steps above this main stage in the Discord channel list. Go over to your MetaMask, wherever you have your wallet address, OpenSea, whatever. Copy that. Now come back to Discord and go to the Request POAP channel. Post in your address. This is your final call. I am about to close the channel. You have exactly 3, 2, 1, half of 1. Okay, 0. Hope everybody got it. Closing the channel. Oh, somebody already closed the channel. Oh, all right. Channel's closed. Great. Somebody else did it for me. Or maybe was the channel not open while I was walking through that? That would be embarrassing. It was already closed. Hold on, folks. All right, but you have your address. I'm opening it up now. Probably.
Yeah, Jeremy. Sorry, I closed it. We were getting a lot of people
POAP
very
spam.
quickly adding. Yeah,
POAP spammers. That's all good. So
very interesting to see the people in here that have never said one word in this server other than their wallet address.
I wonder if they like actually. I wonder how that works. Like, are they? I mean, I imagine there are some people who are like real people, but they just don't engage in the conversation. But I have to imagine a lot are bots. But I don't really understand why you would build a bot to go and collect POAPs. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The POAP channel is open, so go ahead and do that. And I'm going to close it very soon. I see mostly green. I would like to see more blues in the POAP channel. There, I see a few. Okay, I'm gonna close.
Why do I see Cohen on the stage as well as in the audience? Oh, he's not in the audience.
He's omniscient.
Okay.
I've just closed the POAP channel. If you missed it, just open up a support ticket. We'll take care of you. Thank you so much for everybody who joined in. I actually have to run, but thank you, Cohen, for setting this up. That was super informative. Such a cool guy. And very cool.
Wait till you see what we're gonna have on Monday. It's gonna be equally as cool on a different level.
Great. I can't wait. You know, I've heard a lot about Blau in different spaces, but I'm not actually familiar with their work. But it just
yeah, his Royale, his music platform, he's super brilliant. Like, people know he's an amazing music artist. He is so bright in this space, and he's been in here like for a long time, like way before everyone. And he's super knowledgeable on tech, dev, deep diving. He knows what he's talking about. I mean, his younger brother is so brilliant, but he's equally as brilliant in this space.
Yeah, it's very cool. I'd love to build
What are
a relationship.
What are our thoughts on doing a secret word POAP from now on, where we spell out whatever the word is? That way, if there are bots in the crowd, they're not just literally dropping their wallet. They have to also go to POAP and enter in.
We could do that.
I do like the fact of having a POAP pre-existingly ready during it versus having to come back and get it. I am a fan of that.
I am more and more too. Yeah, we can do that going forward.
I think that might be the play. Might
Great.
keep things calm and collective, because I have a very funny feeling that this room filled up right after you opened up that channel there. And
terrible.
I was looking around at some of the people in the room and just double checking to see if they've ever talked in this server. And A lot of them have not.
That's all right. The real ones know who they are. And I would imagine the bots also don't come back to claim it either. So
Right. Also, for whoever's listening for the POAPs, if you invite 5 people, you get an extra POAP.
is that true?
Nope.
All right. I got to run, but it was a great show.
Yeah.
I will.
For every
I'll-
100 people you bring in, we'll give you 5 POAPs.
for ev-
5 limited edition POAPs.
Yeah, 5.
Yeah.
You just have to bring 100 people in.
Yeah.
We're gonna have like 200,000 bots.
I doubt it. Let's hope not. Anyway,
I gotta run. Good night, guys.
good night. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you at the next one.
Later.
All right, there you have it. Really fun stuff. What a lesson in technical know-how. Very cool. Thank you, x0r, and thank you for watching the show. Yeah, that was fun, right? Good to see you, Drofig. Thanks for being here. And to the other 2 of you who are watching, my heart goes out to you as always. Thank you. And we're going to do another one of these on Monday. We're launching the Leveling Up project. If you haven't got into the Leveling Up Heroes Discord that I'm community manager for, happy to welcome you there. And you can have a hero list pre-sale access because I'm not giving away hundreds, and I have control to do that actually. But you know, it's I guess I should talk about it really quick since the 3 of you are here and other people may watch this. Leveling Up Heroes is a project associated with Eric Sue, who is the CEO of Single Grain. He runs a marketing agency. They've like had business deals. The story is actually cool. It's actually like a failing agency, and then he picked it up and actually brought it back, and now they're profitable, and they've been working with Amazon and Uber and Airbnb. And so he wrote a book called Leveling Up about leveling up your life through gamification of your success, basically, and having, you know, short-term activities that are progress-based and tracking your progress and, you know, a lot of growth mindset and like personal development stuff, but sort of rooted in like RPG and gaming. And he's a really great guy. So I've decided to work with him, and he's releasing a membership pass. So it's a 3-tier membership pass. The highest tier is out now. It's minting. The wider tier is 6,789. We actually just cut the supply down from 12,000 because our community isn't that large yet. So we're going to be minting 6,789 for 0.078. You know, there's sort of a play on this leveling up, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9. And there's a lot of different benefits. I'm not going to like roll through everything. But if that intrigues you, if you want access to that community, there's going to be IRL events and some marketing education access. And then in probably 4 to 6 months, we'll roll out a PFP, which is only accessible through the membership pass. So like the benefit of having multiple or higher tiers is higher rarity and multiple mints for the PFP, and multiple tickets to the IRL events. Although I want to be clear, it's actually access to the IRL events. It doesn't cover the cost of the ticket to the event, which I don't think we have a set price for yet. But that's just a little bit about Leveling Up Heroes. You can find it on my Twitter or Leveling Up NFT on Twitter. You can check really quick. Leveling Up NFT. That's it. So peace out. Thanks again as always, and I hope you have a wonderful day.